Thanks for joining us. This is Notepad. My name is Ibrahim Sani. Earlier in the morning, we covered the extensive report between Astro AWANI along with two other agencies, the Input-Output Economic Association of Malaysia, as well as Pusat Kajian Pasaran Buruh Masa Depan, EU-ERA. The highlight of the study shows that the purchasing power and the inability for Malaysians, especially in the B40 and the bottom half of the M40, is struggling in its dire straits right now in terms of trying to manage economic hardship. It involves 120 households of B40 and M40 located in 27 localities in the Klang Valley, 18 of which is in the PPR or Project Perumahan Rakyat or the low-cost housing development projects in and around Klang Valley. Joining us this evening is Datuk Medaline Berma. She joins us all the way from morning just now. Thank you very much,
Thank you very
Doctor.
much.
We heard a lot of the conversation just now in terms of some of the activities and initiatives that could be done.
Right.
One of the highlights that you brought forward on Niaga AWANI was on the topic of trying to empower community involvement. We've talked at length, not just with you, but with all the other stakeholders in terms of government handouts and government assistance. But it really needs to be thought about in terms of more than what activities can be done. I want to explore some of the policies that can be initiated as well. The budget is just around the corner. A new government or the same government is going to be ushered in the next few months. Now would be a good time to talk about greater policy features that can actually improve on the economic hardship of the B40 and M40. What will be some of the key ideas that you can share with us in terms of structurally change how we do things? Or is it because it's a cultural issue?
Okay.
You know, rather than economic policy.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me to share my thoughts. Yeah. There was a very interesting finding that that was presented to us this morning about what Astro's research was all about. So one of the things that I really felt that there's a lot of government efforts. Yeah, the fact that there's a lot of efforts being done shows that there's a strong government presence. So it kind of erodes, the role of communities. So to me, we need to empower community, as you have rightly mentioned, and that is not just purely supply side. Supply side is always about giving. The other side about supply side that we should also look into is that when you try to address a problem, there is always from the income perspective or the expenditures perspective. Okay, from the income perspective, nothing much have changed. Okay. What would I mean by that? If you look at it, like you mentioned earlier that you talk about purchasing power and things like that. The income increase is only a certain percentage. Yet inflation
has superseded that.
Yes, superseded that. That's number one. Yeah, okay, we do have what we call minimum wage, but you know how difficult it was to implement.
And also enforce.
Yes.
Not just that. But if I can just share my own story. I worked at Wan Utama. After my SPM days, this is late 90s. I was paid 1,100 then. My cousin has just finished her school and she is currently working at Wan Utama. Her salary is 1,100. I got the shock of my life. There is no wage increase over the past 25 years of the gap between my work time and her work time. This is and this story resonates. I mean, I can repeat the same story. Many others that are watching us right now can also repeat the same story.
That's true. So these are really issues that we really need to address. So in order for income to increase, the economy needs to be, but look at our economy. And there is even prediction. Today they're going to announce, the second quarter. But looking at the IMF report and looking at the World Bank report and the prediction for next year, there's going to be, the economic growth is going to really stall, and we are going to be in deep trouble because we are also part of the bigger.
Of course, we're not isolated.
Yeah. So given that situation, so as much as we want to sort of try to address the expenditure side, where the isi rumah and all the households and everything. But on the other hand, number one, I would really hope that the government will focus also in economic growth, address all the structural issues that has been there. COVID really provided us with an opportunity to do a lot of reforms. In terms of our wage structure, in terms of we are talking about digitalization, but where are we? So maybe to me it's just. Probably it is there, but maybe it's not good enough in the sense that rakyat keep on asking, So now the focus is always on handouts. If there's a problem, handouts. And then the other one will be subsidy. Okay, so it has always been this. But I would want to see more of economic growth. I am really for, big infrastructure projects. I'm really for mega projects. Why? Because mega projects allow you to create more jobs and income will increase. But at the moment, investors, are they coming in?
No.
See?
There is a cash outflow in terms of foreign direct investment.
Exactly. And also, now we are purely relying on, to a certain extent, is basically domestic investment.
Yeah, even that is shrinking right now.
Yeah.
Another area that we can lock on is, of course, the focus on how companies need to be enforced in terms of increasing their wages of their workers. At the same time, trying to, bring the hammer down on companies that do not comply.
Exactly.
A lot of the employer association has said that this minimum wage is encumbering the growth of some of these SMEs and companies.
That's true.
My argument is, let the business, if not be viable, be out of business.
Yes.
I know it's a cold hard statement.
It is.
But welcome to capitalism.
Yeah.
This is what we are. We're not a socialist country. We're not a communist country. We're trying to make things more capitalistic. If there are 3 companies, one of them can't survive because of the increased wages, then let it die.
Yeah.
You're not viable enough to be in the market economy.
Right.
What do you think about this kind of view?
Yeah, I love this kind of discussion, or rather discourse, which I think the universities should be really engaged in. So on one hand, like you say, if you can't survive, then you just can't survive. There is no bailing out, or you keep on helping them. They need to survive. But like you say, it's really cold-hearted lah, hati batu lah punya policy.
But what to do? If 3 people are selling the same thing.
Election is coming just around the corner. So I don't think our politicians will go for that.
Okay, so now we're talking about political will.
Yeah,
Okay.
Basically, those who don't survive, there are some that can. The argument has always been this. Maybe we help them.
Yeah, but you're right. The political will argument. If the politics doesn't want to make this work, then nothing can work.
Just look at our KWSP.
Okay.
You know.
So there's a story about the KWSP.
withdrawals.
Yeah. Okay. So on the issue of KWSP, I know some of the numbers are actually quite troubling.
Yeah.
Including over 2.5 million KWSP members have below 1,000 ringgit savings. Only 3% have enough. 3% of the 7.8 million members have enough savings of more than $500,000 ringgit,
Right.
basically enabling them to give a 2,500 ringgit monthly income after they retire for the next 20 years.
Right.
It doesn't even resolve the whole issue of long tail risk, assuming
Right.
you live above 75. You really don't have money or not enough money. When I had Nur Hisham Hussein, the CEO, the Chief Strategy Officer of EPF, he was actually making a very troubling remark. 4% of Malaysians have enough, and that's the good news because it was 3% before.
Okay.
So, if you look at 7.8 million, or let's call it 8 million people, takkanlah only 4% ada enough. So what does it mean with the rest of the 7.6, 7.8 million people that is a part of the KWSP members? So there's no safety net. Now, one thing that we need to understand is the whole T20 versus M40, B40 argument. If you are T20, it doesn't mean you're rich. It just means you earn more than 80% of the rest of us.
Yes.
And in KL, it's only 4,400 ringgit. 4,400 ringgit qualifies you to be called a T20 if you're in KL. That's so bizarre. It doesn't mean that you're rich. It just means that you, at 4,400 ringgit per individual, you're earning more than 80% of the rest of people in KL. Clearly, that has to change. But the structural changes has to come in. Where do you see the importance of policy making in terms of increasing wages in Malaysia, Doctor?
Okay. Because, the interplay of politics is really very, very important in policy making, right? Because it's definitely the government of the day. That's why the fact that we are really round the corner election, I don't think these immediate structural reforms will and can happen. I'm very pessimistic in that sense. Probably maybe by early next year, after election and after all our budget, by budget will be announced in October. So by then, maybe by February or March, that's when things start really. So maybe if anything needs to be done or will be done, I think that will be around that period.
Okay,
so
but
for the drawing, the drawing, maybe they are doing it right now.
Yeah.
We have a lot of intelligent policymakers out there. But if you look at the narratives, the discussion, it's still the same thing. harga minyak naik, harga minyak kelapa sawit naik, minyak
Minyak
masak
masak.
naik. So what do we do?
Yeah.
No, it's either subsidy, withdrawal of KWSP, or basic handouts.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. So
And every time we're bleeding.
you will, yes,
Either 80 billion ringgit bleeding subsidy, 4 times so far,
Yeah.
could be 5 times.
right.
EPF is
it's going to be.
going to be hit again.
Again.
And of course, with the whole cash handout, the government has no more cash to
And
play.
soon it will be GLCs.
Uh,
They say, oh, there's a cash cow there. So that one so far we have not heard about that yet. So you're right. We are bleeding, and bleeding profusely. You see, it's interesting to see what our budget is going to be like. So everyone
but
is
it
looking.
is an election budget, so there will be sweetness
Yeah.
and macam-macam gula is going to be handed out.
Lagi gula lagi tinggi lah tu.
Betul.
But
Diabetes semua
let
ni.
us not be so pessimistic. I'm sure there is a hope, or rather there's light at the end of the tunnel. Because one thing we can say that, well, on one hand you can say that yes, the government has responded very fast. Every time there is a problem, there is. But the nature of that response is very, it's just like you're short lah, It's just quick fix. But it doesn't really talk, because when you talk about reform, it is really something that is very, especially when you talk about structural reform. You're talking about, like we say, digitalization. Where are we heading actually? And the only thing, or the recent one is of course the tax, internet tax, the SST tax, 10% across the board. That is another issue. Those small scale producers were saying, in the past, anybody that is earning below 500, they're not being taxed. Now, with the new internet tax, the small players, both the consumers and the producers, are going to be taxed.
But this particular initiative, Doctor, has already been announced since last year.
Yes.
And it has been debated since last year. There's a lot of rationalization in terms of executing it. On behalf, speaking on behalf of the government, I can see where they're getting at.
Right.
However, it's still not as effective a tax method, say, compared to the GST.
Of course.
And that's why we need to talk about when the government is going to reintroduce GST. But GST is a taboo subject. When I had the Deputy DG of LHDN over, he said on air, no government has survived after introducing GST, ours included, around the world.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's very interesting. Let's say the Labour government introduces
I
GST.
see. Okay,
Labour
okay.
government will vote it out.
Right,
Conservatives come in, and then maybe later on they will come in again. Whatever it is, GST is such a political hot taboo to a point where no government has survived, including the administration under Datuk Seri Najib Tun Razak and the BN. But of course, you can't just take it just like that.
Right,
He was voted out because of other reasons as well.
Right.
But generally speaking, GST, if it's to be introduced, the government of the day is going to really think very hard about reintroducing it. So again, we fall back to that political will argument.
Right,
So you can have all the smarts of people in the think tanks drawing up the policy issues, the people at MOF and yang sewaktu dengannya in terms of building the policies, but the political will argument is truly well and truly beyond our control in terms of seeing what it takes. Do you feel that there could be an opportunity for some political leaders to actually come up and say, you know what, I'm going to give you that medicine, I'm going to give you that hard pill to swallow, but if you do it, you're going to be better. This is what it is.
The way I look at it, going through all the content analysis, what we did, for example, before GST and then during GST and after GST, and of course the fallout and everything.
Yeah.
Because I think the way GST was being implemented and communicated to rakyat is really, I would have
Less to be desired.
I think that is really something. But after this, after what happened, and then with our fiscal situation, we are in the red and all the while. So people are saying, oh, maybe GST is worth it. So it's not as bad as what we thought. But of course, the percentage. So not the kind of percentage that we have. And I think there's a lot of communication that needs to be done. How do you communicate this to the rakyat? How is it being calculated? Why is it better than the not go into the details? The way I understand, they have a lot of roadshow at the time before GST was implemented.
Yeah,
and
I was involved in some of them actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can tell you
in terms of covering, not executing.
but this one is academics were involved. This I kind of know and can imagine how it was being. So you need simple graphic. That you need really people who can, because yang terkesan is that the M40 and the B40 were the one, the way they understood it, first cukai, Nobody wants to use cukai as a solution. Because the idea of individual versus, the social good, the community, this thing doesn't come down well. If it is good for me, then it's only good for me. You don't think about, is it good for the nation? Why do I worry about the nation? Here I am saving money, and there are people who are squandering money.
Again, every person for himself.
Yes, exactly. So now I think if there is any effort, or I think that there's a lot of argument now that people say maybe we should reintroduce
even harmony tax or harmonized tax.
Yes,
have
they
you
did
ever
mention
heard of
that
it?
also.
The blend between GST and SST. We see it in Canada, for instance. Federal has GST, provincial state has SST, and they blend it together.
Yes,
something like that.
So these are options, and in that discussion, rakyat kena tahu tau. You don't just come in and then boom. Yes. So I think that is where the initial problem was. They do road shows. First, of course, people hated the fact that it's SST.
But we fall back to that whole argument. It's political year. It's election year. Nobody's going to do this.
But then maybe after that, because they need,
they need the cash. Or else these small taxes comes in. The internet tax lah, the small holders tax lah, this import buying on Lazada from China will get you a 10% tax. All this.
Right. These are short-term.
Short-termism.
So macam itulah. But what as you rightly mentioned, the word is structural, and sometimes people don't like to use the word reform lah, reformasi kan. So but change.
But
adakah kita keberanian?
I'm going to call it as it is. We need a reform. We need a reset. Kan?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go for one short break. When we come back, we'll discuss a little bit more with Datuk Dr. Medaline Berma. We'll be right back after these messages. Thanks for staying on with us. I have with me in the studio Datuk Dr. Medaline Berma. In the morning, we covered the topic of the tripartite research that shows the issue of household income and household expenditure that is involving 120 households in the Klang Valley. Right now, this evening, we're talking about some of the elements of structural changes and policy that the government must and should take. But we somehow or other, Dr. Medaline, we veer towards talking about politics because, and by the way, I am not a political pundit, but this is what it is. Economy and politics does come hand in hand. And the issue here is that I'm just complaining out loud here. The political parties or the political actors of the country today do not present to me their political plan. For better or worse, I have no idea what they're going to do, assuming they're going to get in power. This current government gives an indicative of what they want to do. However, there's no economic plan. In cold hard cash, senang kata, in terms of the book, this is the economy plan for the next 2 years. I do not see that unless we take the budget as a key indicator, as an indicator. But economic plans are absent, and I feel that is so scary as a rakyat, because I don't have to agree with anybody's economic plan, but as long as somebody has an economic plan, that's good enough. Where do you see yourself in terms of trying to understand better how the political leaders are going to take the country, economic-wise?
Okay, that's an interesting question, because I was following a lot of these what do you call the political parties. They had their, I think they had their what do you call it? Big events like campaigns, and some of them were even had big meetings and the biggest meeting before the election. Even I was looking at PKR, I was looking at DAP, UMNO and things like that. So the main players, except for Muda lah, tak sempat. So okay, so when I look at you're right, at least in the last election, we know what is going to happen. They want to just overthrow somebody, the existing government, and we want to come up with something new. Very clear, very clear. Yang ini, I'm not even sure where are we heading. Of course, there is this issue about alignment, realignment, but it's all about politics. The economics, we're only waiting for budget, number one. We hope that it is going to be an indication, but it's going to be an election budget. So more gula-gula, Okay,
Yeah.
and then the other one will be our Malaysia plan,
Yeah.
which is coming up
Yeah,
soon. Okay,
yeah.
so that is a. But our Malaysia plan, if you notice, I've been following our Malaysia plan, is getting thicker and thicker and thicker.
Yeah.
And I don't really know where are we going.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
very
exactly.
very thick now.
Yeah, yeah.
The last one was really thick. We said boleh guna untuk apa nasi impit.
Yeah, yeah,
Some
yeah.
of the people were telling us.
Yeah, yeah.
I said, oh really? But so it's unlike in the past where you're very clear. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. But this one is full of so many things that I think we're really losing out the main focus.
This is so hilarious because I think 2 years ago I went to a seminar, and the person giving the seminar was showing me, Philips,
Okay.
the electric company.
Right.
Philips annual report from 1970 to 2020.
Okay.
The literal book.
Okay.
In 1970, the annual report was this
All right.
thick, and then eventually it just grew
Uh-huh.
per year.
Okay.
So it became, and he said that you compare that against Philips revenue, it's about the same.
Okay.
1970
Right,
until
right,
2020. So how can a business that has about the same revenue
Right.
has thicker and thicker financial report or annual report?
All right.
It shows that the reporting has taken over the idea of what is supposed to be done.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. When I last read the Malaysia plan, it was I got lost after
Yeah, that's
10 pages.
Right.
And there's still a few hundred pages to go. Do you feel that the whole clarity of them not knowing what to do is there? It's so obvious right now that the government has no idea what to do.
Well, I can't really say that they don't know what to do. I'm sure they know what they want and what, but the idea of planning, like you say, we are one of the few developing countries. I mean, if we could still consider ourselves a developing country, the few that still have planning, done, because in the old days, planning is viewed as very socialistic, because the government tells you what we're going to do. Because in the old days, it's always the contestation between private and between capitalism, the market, and the government.
Yeah.
Okay? So when we introduce, a few developing countries introduce planning. So yes, because planning requires, of course, thinking. The other one is you must have the resources, to ensure that your planning will succeed. And the third one is, of course, the political will and everything. So a lot of other countries have faltered. But Malaysia consistently, kita lah, yang masih lagi ada planning. And like, as I mentioned to you, it gets thicker and thicker. So now I'm not really sure. But of course, the nature of planning in the old days is quite straightforward. They will just have go to sectoral. Pertanian, agriculture, industry, blah, blah, blah. Now it gets so much. There is physical part to it. There's like transport. They will tell you where they're going to build the latest, ERL or ECL or whatever they call it. So these things kind of overshadowed the big picture, the keywords there. What is planning all about? To them, to me, this can just be put inside all the physical planning, the real national economic planning. Where are we heading? Rakyat nak tahu tu.
No one does. No one knows. We have to draw this conversation to a close, but just to recap, we can't rely on the government for everything. The three methods of them managing the situation, either through subsidies, which Tengku Zafrul has mentioned 2 weeks ago, that in the absence of subsidies, inflation rate could go as high as 11, 12, 13%. That's one item. But the subsidies, weaning off the subsidies, we still don't have any plans on that.
Right.
We know that it is needed. We also know that targeted subsidy is important. No plans on that either. The second item is, of course, EPF and any other social net that we have. I think enough data has been given to the public in terms of various think tanks saying that Malaysians do not have the safety net. I think you spoke about it in the morning as well with my colleagues Najib and Harith Ashraf Hasnan. There's also the third item, which is called the cash handouts, which we know that is unsustainable and we're bleeding cash. So that is on behalf of the government. But on behalf of the community builders, you were harking about your experience back in the UK, where community builders are actually the key factor in terms of ensuring that the people in the community get fed. To be frank, get fed first.
Yes.
Shelter to even second.
Yes.
Feed first, right? In Malaysia, we don't see that. at least amongst the PPR dwellers and other B40 localities,
Yes.
don't know what went wrong there.
Yeah.
And do you think that that is something that we need to really embrace upon right now?
I think that is basically what we need to do now. How can we empower the community? Yes, the government has done their part, and I can say thank you.
Yeah.
But the community, don't forget the community. The basis is there. Like we're talking about food first. This morning I talked about food bank. These are very simple things that can be done with the community. Get them to manage their own food bank.
They know what they want.
They know what they want. They don't need all the dry food stuff probably that has been dished out during. I remember during COVID, we really, those dry food was really, it is good in the short term, but in the long term, sugar issues of high sugar content, and then Maggi, all this kind of fast food thing. So I think if you ask even the data that was presented just now, it shows that the younger generation prefers cash. The older generation prefers in kind. So even that very simple analysis to show that no one size fits all. We have been talking about it. So to me, let us go back to the community, go to the NGOs, get them to be engaged because they are the best people. Government, what you do best is up there.
On the ground.
On the ground is that you need to work with the NGOs because the NGOs are really very, very close on the ground. Like for example, using the internet or apps. In Malaysia, you need to be registered to be considered poor.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if you
That's
don't know that
already
you need to be registered, how are you supposed? You will never be.
And then there's of course misregistration.
Right. There's another. The Penans don't even know that they need to be inside there.
Yeah.
People in the long houses.
Yeah.
So technically, you see how apps are made. But the NGOs during COVID, I tell you, of course they cannot move. The mobility was very limited. So they even have apps. They know which household, what do they need. One household may need napkins, babies, and also for family. The other one, maybe what they need is just simple textbooks. So it's not a one size fits all. So the NGOs knows what. So we could learn from each other, sharing of information and how in a new era, in the internet data, Internet of Things and things like that, this is going to be the way forward. So we're going to know, like for example, in poverty, we are so used to filling up questionnaires.
There's a lot of opportunities here.
Yes.
Say for instance, in terms of private enterprises, if they want to think about using data and technology in terms of helping the community, there's a lot of opportunities.
Yes,
here.
and we teach
But then there's
our
also the
community.
whole investment by investors.
Right.
Political risk is shying them away, let's face it. There's also the market size.
Right.
If they have X amount of money, do they want to invest in a country like Malaysia with 32 million people,
Right.
or 80 million the way Vietnam has, or 200 million
Or
like
our
Indonesia?
neighbours, yeah.
So we're really not in favor, not in a favorable position in that sense.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. Community empowerment has to be the key feature moving forward. If we can't wait for dasar or policy or government,
Right.
empower each other.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to continue on this conversation throughout this weekend over at Astro AWANI. Continue to stay with us. We're going to be covering all the issues related to economy as well as the household income and expenditure. Do check out on all these kind of content that we have on our social sites as well as on astro.com. But we have to draw this conversation to a close. Thank you very much again,
Thank you.
Datuk Dr.
Thank
Medaline
you.
Berma. My name is Ibrahim Sani. Continue and enjoy your weekend.